Welcome to the Wealthy Author Summit. I am your host, Marc, Guberti, the podcast and virtual summit launch coach, bringing you expert sessions from top authors where we teach you how to write, publish, and launch profitable books that take your brand to the next level. And there are a variety of different ways to get more attention for your books and get more sales, but at the same time, I can feel like we've heard the same types of methods and strategies over and over again. So that's why in this session, we're going to talk about how do we find creative outside of the box solutions to get more attention and sales for our books. The expert who joins us in this session, she is an author, actor, speaker, and strategist. And she's also the person behind the blog and book Spelling It Out, which teaches people the insider secrets to living your dreams and passions. Our expert who joins us for this session of the Wealthy Author Summit is none other than Julieanne O'Connor. Julieanne, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Wealthy Author Summit.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it.
Julieanne, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Wealthy Author Summit. And I feel like book marketing is so important, but we've also heard a lot of the same things over and over again. Not to say that they're bad, but to say that we want some outside of the box, some blue oceans for people who get the blue ocean strategy reference. So how do we get to start to think and find these different creative solutions for marketing our books?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things that I had to really embrace early on would be, really becoming an author. And I didn't actually plan to be an author in the beginning. That was never like what I set out to do, for what it's worth. But once I became one, it was really, I had to embrace this idea of everybody's path and journey being a little bit unique from everyone else's. And so it's taking all these different ideas that people throw your way and then putting your own creative twist on them. So for example, when I did my first book tour, I started with, of course, going into bookstores. I'd do my Barnes and Noble or whoever, I'd be out there signing, and I was so bored. And so what I realized is I really wanted to go to a winery. And so I literally had my tour manager help me book wineries for my book signings. And that was because that was fun. And people would be sipping on their glass of wine and they would open up. And so I would have such a great time chatting with people. So as an example, that would be one of those things where I could kind of embrace the joy in my own journey. And then that, of course, leads to more sales because people feed off of your energy and they want to know. And I remember having people lined up in wineries and I was cracking up because I'm like, just have a glass of wine. We'll all sit around the barrel and I'll sign books there, But it's really just been so much fun. And the more I think we embrace the joy, the more fun it is and the more you sell.
Yeah, and I mean, wineries, that's not the first place people are thinking about when it comes to a book tour, but it's this idea of, Julieanne was kind of a little bored with like doing only the conventional stuff, only the things that you normally see in an author launch. And she decided to think of this outside of the box idea for her launches. And did this idea just randomly pop up? Like, did you give your time in the day to think, how am I going to do something different for my book? Or was this more of like this just happened to pop up?
It really was a joy factor for me. I was like, where else I literally was thinking, where else can I do this that would be fun? It wasn't so much that I even knew the power in it. And that led to even going out to clubs and bars and some odd places. Now, I don't recommend clubs and bars. I'm just going to tell you right now, like as an author, that's a very difficult arena. And because you have to be so engaging, you kind of have to be a master at getting people's attention and you don't want to be lost in the shuffle. But in the winery world, it's a whole different thing because you can collaborate with the people who own the wineries, and there's just so much marketing that can be done around that. So the wineries will go out there and they'll blog about it, they'll post about it, and you really tap into these local markets and communities that then get picked up in the papers. And then, of course, all of that stuff snowballs. And I can tell you story after story where you start really small, and if you go in there with humility, that snowballs into really big things. I've been written up about or seen on everything from Wall Street Journal to CNN to you name it, because I started in the local markets, and that just grew and grew and grew. And everything piggybacks on everything else.
And you've mentioned the local markets a few times, and doing a book tour is something that authors know they should be doing, but it's not necessarily something everyone is doing. Can you talk about how you organize the book tour with all the venues and be able to
Yeah.
position your book?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of having a team. But it wasn't always that way. I have grown my team. I have, a manager. I have, agents. I have all these different people who play into assistants and all these people who help me now. But in the beginning, it was me, and it was getting on the phone and, talking to people. It was the same thing with getting your books into the bookstores, picking up the phone and making those phone calls, developing those relationships. But whatever area that you decide that you want to go into, for example, if it was the winery, I would call the local wineries and start there. And then I just started, I was so into wanting to have fun with it that I would pick markets that I wanted to visit. So I literally would pick the coastal markets, and I still am in touch with many of these people, and who had brought me in for these events, and they did so much of my marketing for me because I picked these markets where sometimes they're small. Some of these coastal communities are small, but they'll bring people in from quite a ways away, believe it or not. And that's not where I stayed. Of course, I have certainly marketed my books through corporate America. I do a lot of speaking, and there's a lot of different areas but that was how I started, just to give you an idea. And I always try to bring in the joy. Like, whatever is fun, that's what I'm going to do. So.
And I bet I just want to make sure there's nothing else to be added, but I definitely do want to get into the corporate side later, because I feel like that is something authors struggle with or just don't understand. But one very important thing I want you to elaborate on and mention here is that Julieanne, she's talking about building relationships with all these people who own all the venues or just decision makers. Notice that she says she's picking up the phone and talking to people, because I feel like a lot of people default to email, but phone calls just do a lot more. Like, do you agree with that? Did you do email stuff as well, or did you just strictly go phone once you saw it was working?
Well, okay, so I am a big fan of, how do I put this? Building a platform. And so I really believe that we think there's an easy path sometimes to do this. And so we think, so for example, when I wanted to get my book published, I started by building my following. And then I reached out to publishers, and I got picked up by publishers and offers because I had this huge following. And I had a book, of course, and so I think, and then that led to phone calls. But really, I kind of look at all the different areas and arenas, and you can't neglect the phone calls, because we know that people are going to pay more attention to your voice than they are the written word. People don't open their emails; you end up in their spam. You name it. But even with social media. I did a Super Bowl commercial that I was in, and I'll just to share the story really quickly. When we filmed that commercial, we had to sort of get attention for that commercial for the possibility of it airing during Super Bowl. And it was the same ideas with a book. And we literally started out by calling people saying, hey, open a Facebook page, not to date myself, but this is what we were doing. So it wasn't just that we promoted Facebook, but we got everyone else to promote it on Facebook. And I'll never forget the day I called my mom and said, open a Facebook page. Come on, you're going to help us promote this. I mean, and so that stuff rolls. And then we did things, we were very creative. Like with Twitter, we would do daily facts surrounding, in this case, it was about a dog, and so we would do, pug facts every day. And everything was sort of outside the box, but it all fed into everything else. And then on top of that, I always try to give a percentage of sales away. So whether now I do it with some of my own causes, but at the time, like with the commercial, I called up the animal causes and I said, hey, if we air during Super Bowl, I'll give you a percentage of sale or a percentage of whatever I made from residuals. And so then they started tweeting it and blogging about it. And you can do the exact same thing with your books. So everything, I never do anything without giving away a percentage, because you have power in giving, and you have power in those people wanting to receive because they're doing something good. And then they also blog and tweet and everything else and promote and put it into the news and the press. So, and always think, also the other thing is always having PR going. I always have a PR, somebody working on my PR for me. So that's constant. I think it was, I don't remember, Bill Gates or somebody who said, even if I went bankrupt, I would always go back to starting with PR, start with PR, get that, public relations going.
Wow, that's a lot of really solid points. I mean, just so much to dissect on that answer. I mean, you've got a lot of like using Twitter with like the hashtag, and a way to kind of build up suspense, get people interested in the book, having a team of people on Facebook promoting. There's so much in there. And I mean, phone calls are so important because I know that's where the question originated, but there's so much background stuff also that really leads any author to the point where they are now. And for you, I know that's bloomed a little bit into corporate. We really briefly touched on that. Can you share a little bit of how you enter into that market and some of the things you do to boost your book sales there?
Absolutely. So, my first book is called Spelling It Out for Your Mate. Really necessarily apply to corporate America, but it certainly applied to people. So therefore it does actually fit in corporate America. And so, it sounds like it doesn't fit, but it does. Now, when I came out with my second book, it's called Spelling It Out for Your Career, excuse me. And so Spelling It Out for Your Career obviously fits in corporate America. But so one kind of begets the other, and I get that. But I even when my book didn't fit, I still entered into the corporate arena. And the way that I went about that was really for my purposes with my subject matter. I went in it saying, hey, I'm here to help you build relationships. So even though my initial book was really about love and sex and, attraction and all this stuff, it still applied. And so I could go in there and say, hey, knock, knock, I'm an author, which gives you credibility, right? And I'd love to come speak to your people about relationships. And I know that's going to help you, build your sales. I know that's going to help you build your teams and your camaraderie, and that's going to ultimately help everything that you're doing. So there's always an angle. I think when you're an author, it's such a gift to be an author. I got to tell you, the fact that I entered this world and never really realized I'd be an author, and then, seeing how different my life is from becoming one, from what it was before. Man, everybody has a book. Everyone should write a book, right? And it's just a question of how does that help people? What's the gift? And humans are working in corporate America. Reach more people because you're in there with groups of people, right? And of course, I gave a TED talk, and so that put you on this sort of international stage with video. But going into corporate arenas, you can also get paid. So in addition to your book sales, you can sell books, or you could give your books away. But then now you're bringing in these honorariums for speaking. So there's many ways, I think, as being an author, to make money. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on book sales, and so much money is out there to be had in other worlds, but because you're the author, you get in the door. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that's helpful.
I mean, it's really insightful. Again, like one of the big themes on the Wealthy Author Summit is that it's not just your book royalties. I mean, if you make six figures through book royalties, you're one of the few, because the authors who are making six figures, they write a book that does not make enough sales to make six figures, but they're selling their services in their books. They're using their books to get on more stages. So that's how the book actually ends up making six figures. You mentioned about knocking on the door of corporate. I'm wondering, how do you find that connection? Like, LinkedIn is a network I'm using, but do you have any different way?
This is a constant journey, right? As an author. So I still do it. Sometimes now I, of course, kind of lean on my team to help me. But truthfully, I would really pick up the phone, and I would call or I would email, and I would start with, a lot of times I do e-blasts. So I would start by just always going to the top. I went right to the CEOs, and, I got in the door to speak in so many places because I went to the CEOs, and the CEOs wrote me back. And I think people take for granted trying to move up the food chain. I go right to the top. If I have to talk to an assistant, I befriend their assistants, whatever it is that I have to do to really develop a relationship. And I am creative. I'll pick an industry that sounds like fun. Again, I always do, now I've got a few industries that I'm really kind of tapped into, and they call me, of course, and I don't have to call them. And that is, once again, a gift, but I worked to get to that point, of course. And so you might say, okay, it would be really fun, like I did with the wineries, to just pick the industry of whatever, network marketing. Everyone wants in any place where they can get a lot of people as quickly as they can. And I'm a fan of that as well, because I'm all about leverage. So the more people you can hit, the better. But you still have to start with a decision maker, or you have to start with their right-hand person. And so you find out who they are, you do a little research, you check them out on LinkedIn, you get to know them a little bit. And, it's really a good idea to start by not asking for everything. It's going in there and maybe trying to figure out if there's something you can offer them. And so I started out, I did a lot of free speaking. I still do free speaking sometimes. I'll have people who come to me, and if they're involved with a cause, offer to speak for their cause. There's so many different things. Offer to gift books for gift bags when they're doing something. There's so many ways that you can get in with people, and it doesn't matter the industry. Everything is run by humans. So at the end of the day, I think it's the same thing. And I have crossed all, I've been in the computer products industry. I've been in dentistry. I've been in, it's like literally I've spoken to so many people I can't even begin to tell you. And it's still all the same beast at the end of the day. Just getting to know people.
I love that.
I wish there was a shortcut, I wish there was
Everyone does.
short, but we have to build it. So.
It's getting to know people. And I think when it comes to corporations, you just have to realize it's a bunch of people. Like, a corporation is its own entity, but it's comprised of a bunch of people. And I think that's going to help a lot of authors be able to hit the corporate realm. The book tour realm was really awesome to be able to talk about that. And I think people should really continue following you in your work. We'll have links, but where are some good places we can go to keep following you on your journey?
Oh, hey, thank you so much. So my website is spellingitout.com. And that's just like it sounds, SPELLINGITOUT, spelling it out. And of course you can find me anywhere on social media, and you can find me all over the web. So by my name or spelling it out, either way.
Well, Julieanne, we'll have those links below. But once again, thank you so much for joining us on the Wealthy Author Summit. It was such a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me.